to Asking for a Friend. Asking for a Friend is an initiative by Never Not Creative, supported by Youngbloods, Mentally Healthy and AGDA. It exists because we wanted to create a safe place for where you can ask the unaskable. The questions that you're worried may change the way people treat you at work or affect the opportunities that you might get given. We're bringing together industry leaders, mental health professionals to give non-judgmental responses in a safe, anonymous environment. And before I introduce our guests, just a little bit of housekeeping. So we have questions that have come in beforehand. So we've got those to get through, but I really do invite you to please ask questions in the questions tab on the right-hand side. We'll get to those towards the end of the session. Also, feel free to add any comments, thoughts, general sort of agreement, thanks, etc. in the chat tab as well. If you need more immediate help, consider getting in touch with any of the organisations on the link that I just popped into the chat. There's lots of great advice and help there as well. Everything that we do with Never Not Creative and Mentally Healthy is volunteer run. And so essentially it's unofficial, and we're a bunch of people using community to come together and tackle the challenges that our industry is facing. So with that in mind, please remember that this is anonymous. We don't have the context for your questions. Everyone's situation is different. Hopefully the advice that you do get here today is something to consider, but also please do seek either professionally or casually from others other help. If things are getting very serious for you, you should absolutely seek professional help, whether that's financial, legal, or mental health related. So with that out of the way, I'm very pleased to welcome back both returning, actually, guests. Alex Wadelton is an advertising writer turned social activist turned author. He's created advertising campaigns that have run all over the world, such as AFL, Cricket Australia, Wrigley's, University of Melbourne, Gatorade, Schweppes. I could go on. He's raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for a range of charities, including one in the last couple of weeks, I think. Was a driving force behind the Nicky Winmar statue and is the co-creator of Future Landfill. His first book with Russell Howcroft, The Right Brain Workout, was a bestseller. I believe there's a second book now as well. Yeah. Alex, yeah, there's two.
It's originally titled The Right Brain Workout Volume 2. So it's
there we go. Easy, the sequel. Also hosts a podcast called The Right Brain Warm Up, where he interviews a range of creative people about why and how they're creative. So thank you for joining us, Alex.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
And Jocelyn Brewer. Jocelyn is a psychologist and cyber psychology consultant. Her passion and expertise lie in the intersection of psychology, technology, and authentic well-being. After 5 years teaching social science, Jocelyn retrained as a psychologist. And in late 2013, she created Digital Nutrition, which is a framework for teaching principles of a healthy, sustainable relationship to technology. Instead of suggesting unplugging or digital detoxing, Jocelyn advocates intentional and intelligent technology use. She regularly presents and writes about the impact of technology and consults on cyber psychology. Other passions include writing, producing quality independent research and social impacts of internet technology use. I think there's some interesting stuff coming up around Web3 and the metaverse and what that's going to all mean for our mental health. So right in and on the pulse. Thanks very much for joining us, Jocelyn.
Pleasure to be back.
Great. Okay. So as I said, we've got lots of questions that have come in beforehand. To anyone who's watching, please do pop questions in the chat because we will get to them. They are all anonymous, and so we'll be looking at it that way as well. Okay, Alex, I'm going to come to you first.
Yes.
I'm in my final year at university, but I just don't feel prepared for getting an actual real job. What can I do to boost my chances of success?
I never feel prepared for anything ever. So I think that's the thing where you can overthink in yourself. There's no time that's ever the right time. You just need to go give things a crack. I've done a lot of things, like I've worked in advertising, I think, for 20 years, even though I look only 25 or so. And I found a lot of the time, working with clients, I'd be scared of, doing things on my own. And I think that's a really great thing that you can do now because of, the internet, that you can go and make things anytime, anywhere, and just do it. And that's really exciting and empowering. So, just go and start doing stuff and be honest with people. Say, like, I'm trying to figure things out and I'm not sure if I'm ready, but have you got any briefs you could give me? Is there anything I can help in ways I can do things? And all of a sudden, you just start asking people as well, like random people all the time. I'm always just emailing people or contacting people who I think are cool on the internet and saying, hey, I think you're awesome. can we connect? Ugh. And half of them won't get back to you. The other half that will. All of a sudden, you're talking to someone that might have a little clue, and they might say, "Oh, I've heard something's going over here." So just go on. Just that. I guess it's just using positive energy begets positive energy. So if you put out into the world, you'll really want to learn stuff. You'll probably get stuff back that'll help you find where you want to go. If that helps.
Have you always been like that?
No, terrible. No.
How did you get over it at the beginning? Because it's quite hard, isn't it? To like, I think people get that advice a lot, which is like, just go ask anyone, go get them for a coffee, go do. Like, how do you get over that initial fear of like, they're just going to ignore me or something?
I guess it's just I had to try something, because being the way I was and limiting myself was making me miserable and depressed and not happy with myself. So I figured, well, I've got to just change things, and who cares anymore? I don't care what people think of me anymore, because if they like me, that's great. If they don't, oh well, we're not meant to be friends, so that's okay. But I just had to, like, I wish I was like I am now 20 years ago, because I probably would have got rid of a whole lot of darkness and black clouds in my life because of overthinking. Because I know that we have this amazing human brain that obviously that's incredible, that does all these things, but also we can get too smart for ourselves and overthink things, I think. And you think of all the worst case scenarios, and now I try to go, well, what's just the best case scenario? Ignore all the bad stuff, because the worst case scenario can go on. You can come up with a million things. But if you think of, well, what could come of this? I sometimes go, well, maybe I'll do something that's really awesome that will make a big difference and will make me happier. So why don't I just do that? So I know it's really, a lot of the things, like I read a lot of, philosophy books and stuff, and I've come to the conclusion that basically philosophy is just thinking deeply about the most obvious things possible to a degree. And I think we overcomplicate things so much. Sometimes you just go, I'll just do it. And Nike have that line, just do it, for a reason. That's probably why it's the biggest, most famous line of all time, because it's so simple. And it is just, you just do need to do it. And you can make yourself a lot happier in a moment, I think.
You've just basically described a bit of cognitive behavioral therapy, I think, because what I would suggest here is that sense of feeling prepared. Like, there might be an expectation that you have of what, like, being an adult and going to your big, real, actual job is like versus what it really is. And obviously there's a lot of pressure around something, and the more we care about something, sometimes the more we are likely to overthink it. So the basic thing I teach people is to catch their thought, to check in with their thought. Is it true and is it helpful? And then to change or to flip it in a way that then is kind of more realistic. So in terms of, like, even what success means, I think we need to get really clear about what success looks like. Is success getting the job and then being able to turn up? And then when you turn up, it's like, hey, so help me understand the lay of the land, making sure you get a really good induction, making sure that you feel comfortable asking kind of the dumb questions so that you make visible some of those kind of overthinking things. Because often when you hear yourself ask those questions aloud and you get the right information, because our brain is a meaning-making machine, when you actually get the information, it kind of calms it all down. So you don't go into that overthinking when you've got certainty and facts. And what Alex said basically about, like, you actually have to go and have that conversation and name it to tame it. So you have to say, I'm new and I feel really out of my depth. Can you help? Most people aren't going to say, no, piss off. They're going to say, of course.
And if they do say piss off, you don't want to work there. So
yeah, exactly. But I think it's sometimes really hard. Like, if you are literally just coming out of uni, I hadn't even turned 20 when I graduated from my arts degree. There was no way I could have been as confident and kind of just give less shits about people around me, because we are social animals. We do need to actually fit in. So I think that's true to an extent, but, we can't fast forward 20 years. And in fact, you don't want to fast forward 20 years.
You go through it all, don't you?
You've got to go through it, but you've got to lean into it and kind of just name it to tame it, I think is.
And also the person in the big chair you're talking to, they probably had the exact same thoughts that you've gone through. Like 20 years ago, they were how you were. And they're probably still, like, I'm sure we'll talk about it. Imposter syndrome. Everyone in the world has imposter syndrome at some degree. Even the biggest, most successful person is deep down completely scared shitless that they're going to get found out. So that's okay. You're just like everybody else. They're just like you, and the levels are maybe a little bit.
I've just popped a link in the chat to all the work that Never Not Creative does on internships. So we actually have internship minimums. So if you look at those, the companies that actually have signed that, so certainly an opportunity. And there's also a guide in there of how to land an internship, how to have the conversation with people, and also a program that you can take to a prospective employer and say, hey, I'm going to do this internship program. It's structured and to use. So that can also give you a chance. Okay. Can everyone still hear me?
You're lagging a little bit, in and out.
Maybe if you turn your video off, we might be able to hear more, perhaps.
Yeah. The system itself has just actually turned your video off for you.
Yeah.
So it's,
Okay. All right. Well, it's not about me anyway, luckily. So let's go to the next question. Jocelyn, over to you. I feel like I'm going backwards. I'm not getting the likes I used to on my Instagram. I don't seem to get much feedback at work, and I just feel like I'm not improving at all. Everyone is getting better than me. What should I do?
Well, I think what you should stop doing for a start is, I guess, comparing yourself to other people and comparing your worth to likes from random strangers on the internet. So two things in here, the sense of I feel like. Feelings are really complex things. They're made up of a little bit of biology, so the squirt of the neurotransmitter, your biography, your kind of story about yourself, your behavior, and your backstory. So when we have feelings, they're these really complex mushes of a whole bunch of information. So again, kind of going back to my 3 C's, I want you to kind of give me a yardstick measure for what is success and what is going backwards, and whether or not some of the comparisons you're making are actually valid ones. So often we get, and if we look at the kind of social media highlights reel and all of the things that happen in those spaces, it's easy to compare yourself to people based on what they share. What you're not comparing yourself to is, the other 23 hours and 45 minutes of their day that they're not sharing, that, oh, look at me doing these fantastic things. The reason we share, by the way, is so that we can be liked and belong. So it fuels our need to have belonging and to have that social status and be included. So it's very normal that you want all of those things, but it sounds like you need to get a little bit grounded and do a little bit of reality testing around what improvement is. And to do that, I guess, like, feedback is super, super important, but we want quality feedback. We don't want likes and kind of fluffy stuff. So what I would suggest there is that we kind of measure what success is and like your yardstick for all of these things. I think you need to recognize that the algorithm's probably messing with you a little bit as well. If you're thinking you're not getting likes on Instagram, it's probably because you only have 2 weeks to show up in people's feeds before you kind of disappear. And yeah, that keeps changing anyway. But maybe it's about asking for feedback. And if you're working in an organization that doesn't have really kind of qualitative, ongoing, meaningful ways to get feedback, then maybe you need to kind of ask for that to be created. So often in online spaces like video games, you get tons of feedback how you're going, because you can see you're either gaining points or losing life. And maybe we need to kind of retro engineer some of the things we do in online spaces so that you can get it in real life.
And I'd say that's all amazing, of course. And obviously, that external motivation is a tricky thing. Sometimes, you think someone giving you a like is going to make you feel better. And as soon as you do that, you're at the mercy of someone else who knows what they're going through. I think that's all good. And also, again, I think if you're not feel like you're getting any feedback at work, then ask for feedback from people who aren't at your work. Like just see who's people you admire. And again, just try contacting them, and you never know. You might get people come back and say to you, I love what you're doing, or have you tried this? Or I think that's always a good way. If you're not getting feedback from where you're at, just try and find some more different avenues to get feedback, and who knows what that might lead to. might be a completely new avenue that all of a sudden you go to a new place because they're like, oh my God, you're exactly what we're looking for. It's so great to have someone reach out to me because usually people don't reach out to me. I'd love to give you advice, Yeah.
It's really hard, isn't it, when you're stuck in that kind of negative self-talk or just like picking on the negative bits of feedback. Like I know sometimes how someone could give you all this great positive feedback actually, and then there's one negative bit in there and you hold on to that, and you kind of forget about everything else. Is there ways to kind of get through that, Jocelyn?
Say that bit again. I was reading the question over there. Sorry, I was like, oh, do people have social fatigues? This is why we should not multitask, because I was only half listening to you.
So it's really easy to, like, when you get feedback, to focus on the negative.
Oh, yes.
And so you might have had like a whole 80%, 90% of positive feedback. But how do you make sure that you actually keep all of that in balance rather than just focus on the negative?
Sorry, I was half listening. So this is called the negativity bias, and our brains love to hold on to bad stuff and kind of forget all the good stuff. So what I would suggest you do, this is sometimes why we do gratitude journals and things like that, is to actually remind us of all of the good stuff that did happen. It's kind of like on your to-do list. You always forget the things that you did do off the list because what you're left with is the stuff that you haven't done. So really being able to work with that bias to know that, from an evolutionary perspective, we had to remember, oh, don't try and jump off that cliff because we're actually not like a bird. We wouldn't have survived. So again,
Nelly Furtado, she's like a bird.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm old. No,
you're not going to fly away. Trust me. No. So yeah, I think it's just being able to go, oh yeah, thanks brain, thanks for sharing that negativity. What's the flip side of that? So again, catching yourself having the kind of negative thought, checking in, is that actually true? Is that actually helpful? And then changing it so it's more, and it's not like, oh, rainbows and lollipops. It's more like, okay, what's realistic is that things feel like they're shifting. Maybe I need to go and, as we're saying, kind of generate more meaningful feedback and use a better yardstick. Like I think everyone feels like we've gone backwards, or at least we haven't gone forwards in the way we plan to coming into 2020. And I think the more we talk about these things too, the more we can kind of reframe them and ground ourselves in what other people's experiences are as well.
Yeah. And also, I think that making sure when you're asking for feedback that you actually value the person you're getting it from.
Yeah.
That's often a big thing. I'll butcher the quote, but it's basically along like, don't take criticism from people you wouldn't turn to advice from. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think often you get feedback from people when you go, do I really actually value what you're saying? Should I value that? So sometimes also it's important to find who's actually giving you the feedback and get to the people who you actually respect. And you're gonna, when they tell you something like, yeah, you're right. Like I once had a creative director, Ben Coulson. I don't know if you guys, I think he's now head of McCann. But he was my creative director at Weiner, and he was never in the office. He was hardly ever seen, and if you did see him, he was looking at the plans for his renovation at home. But then when you'd go to him to show him some work, he would sit there and he would think about every single idea and try and find the positive in it before, saying it wasn't great. But then he would just have this way of cutting through it all, and you were like, of course, that completely makes sense. He doesn't have to be in the office for 14 hours a day. He doesn't have to be yelling at you like so many creative directors I've worked for. They're just having that space sometimes is really good. And I've always valued his opinion, because it's just like, yes, you get it. You've got that distance to come up with the great feedback. So finding those people is invaluable, because I know I found a lot of, people in advertising at the top can get a little political and a little, working you to the bone. And I don't think that's obviously the way forward. So yeah, just find the right people to give you the right feedback. I think that could be very important.
And to chuck another quote in there that I think is relevant is that a wolf doesn't lose sleep over the opinion of sheep. So, we've got to be careful that we're not kind of seeking that positive reinforcement from strangers on the internet if they're not people that we would go for a drink with or have a conversation with. So, yeah. I
mean, it's just on that negative feedback thing, I mentioned that I helped make a statue of Nikki Winmar, and I still remember friends saying, statue's been done before. And that I just still think of that. And now I look back, at the time I was like, what do you mean? This could be amazing. And now I'm just like, how fucking stupid is that? Excuse the French. Like, why would I value that person's opinion? Like, I cannot be associated with people who think something like that isn't of value. Like, so it's just, you just sometimes over time, you just start to go, if you start to hear people keep saying this sort of stuff that you just can't see the value in, then stop talking to them. That's no problem.
Well, and there is, you know, our industry certainly is very driven by putting up a piece of work and then going reading the comments or the polls and the, you know, the likes and the not likes, and, you know, without really, again, like, there's so much context missing from stuff that you see online. In that comment, I think you were reading, Jocelyn, it says that, you know, polls and that kind of thing can help in terms of understanding how much people like someone's work. But is there a trend at the moment post-COVID, apparently post-COVID, that people have social fatigue and not bothering to contribute as much? Or do you think it's still as strong as ever?
I think it depends on the communities and how pulled they are. So I go for a week without spending a lot of time on social media because I'm just too busy. And then when I have some downtime, I'm actually back on and I'm catching up. So I think different communities, so like my Twitter community is full of teachers from my teaching days, and that's very, very different, say, to a creative community. So I think it kind of moves and changes all the time. And there's just so much content so often. I think I don't participate in half as many surveys as I used to, because it's just like, and my time is turned into too much confetti. And I think that's what's happening, unless you kind of, you know, time block, here is when I'm going to go on LinkedIn to really do that kind of networking and connection, then, and yeah. Don't know.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next question. To you, Alex. I'm a mature age student and graduating next year. I'm studying design after being a structural engineer. I have to start at the bottom. I feel so far behind. I'm looking for internships as I feel like I have to earn my stripes. Any tips?
So, well, I guess there's a couple of parts to that. About, don't worry about starting late. Lots of people in life who are the most successful people in the world started super late. How old was J.K. Rowling when she got her first book published? No, lots of people aren't. When the King's coming out the back, you know, I've worked in advertising for 20 years, and now I've kind of started as during corporate workshops. So I'm kind of completely starting again afresh, and I'm like, it's exciting, it's new, but I've got all this experience behind that you can bring. You know, that if you're come from engineering, you've got all this amazing experience in something that no one else in the design agency is going to have, and that's actually awesome. Like, how good's that? You've got a superpower, so that's really exciting. And yeah, internships, I guess, if you're going to be design, doing something out of the ordinary is always the best way to get someone's attention. Like, if everyone else has got a folio or everyone else has got a website, what can you do that gets on the news and people go, oh, I saw you talking about this stupid thing. Like, I got a mate of mine who's just a genius, Aaron Tyler. He did this thing a few years ago where he redesigned all the Australian currency, Australia cash. So there was like Kath and Kim was on the $50. There was Carl Stefanovic. There was, Agro from Cartoon Connection was on there. I think Adam Goods was on the $2 coin. It was so brilliant. He got on so much press. And because I just became friends with him, I was like, this is awesome. This is funny. I bought one of his things that's framed on the wall somewhere. And then a few years later, I was like, we got to become friends, and he was into footy. So he's the guy I texted saying, would you like to try and make a statue of Nicky Winmar? And because he just did something completely nothing to do with work, he just did something that was really cool, that was about design and art direction. We've made this amazing connection. We've had to make a statue get made, and he's done all these amazing things. It's just by getting out there and doing stuff. And sometimes that, I think it is when you wait for a job or wait for a brief, that you're going to keep waiting, but you can just go and do something tomorrow. And you've got this, like I said, every time I do a creative workshop, I'm like, you have this advantage of this internet that you can reach literally everyone with an amazing idea, well done. You can do it like straight away for not much money, and you can put your passion into it, and people will see that passion, and you've got something that's going to separate you from everyone else who has a follow. So I did this thing that was seen in all over the world, or was seen in Paris, and I remember people sending me articles about the thing I did for Future Landfill. It was people overseas. It was in French magazines and stuff. It's like, how cool is that? It wasn't for work. It was just because it was cool to do. So do some stuff that's cool, and all of a sudden you'll get noticed and you'll stand out, no matter how old you are.
Yeah, I basically said leverage your experience. So, the fact that you're a structural engineer, engineers are all about solving problems. So I think that I would really be using that. But also I'm going to drill into the language here. I feel like I have to start at the bottom. There's that negativity kind of thing coming through in that language again. Like starting again, isn't necessarily at the bottom, it's starting afresh. And leveraging that experience. What skills translate? What skills do you have that far surpass somebody who is, finishing their first year? Mature age, like technically you're a mature age if you're 22. So I guess there's an ageism thing that's playing out here about your own sense of what age is. I have just embarked on becoming an entrepreneur at the age of 44 because I had an idea for something that actually doesn't exist yet. So I'm going to, I have the privilege, I guess, of exploring that. So a lot of this is mindset to me. In a lot of these questions, there's a bit of a kind of theme around lack and deficit and difficulty rather than, flipping that again, the change part and the challenge part into, well, where do I want to be and how do I want to feel? How can this become a new adventure rather than a slog?
And also, I think a funny thing is, if you're a little bit older for that, you'll be treated more as an adult faster than someone who's young, actually, thinking about it. Like I know I used to work with a guy, Heath Collins, who's creative director at Cummins & Partners in Melbourne, and he'd been a musician and bands and stuff and been working in a warehouse, and then he got a job at Cummins. They gave him a job, an opportunity to do an internship when he's like 30, 31 or something, and now all of a sudden, 5 years later, he's creative director and he's kicking ass all over the place. And because he's probably a little bit older, all of a sudden they can see you're a bit more mature, and they might go, "Oh, we can give you more responsibility quicker." So it might actually be in the long run, with all your experience, you might actually progress through faster in a funny way.
I think that's a really important point. Like, when you move career, you shouldn't just discard everything that you did previously. Like it's given you so many things that you are good at, and actually, I think especially in design and creativity, a lot of people will go to, how good you are on the tools, and it's just such a small part of it that actually, how you deal with people, whether you can take feedback, whether you can solve problems, like you said, Jocelyn, I think you've probably learned so much in your other career that you're bringing in that nobody else has, and that certainly could be a real advantage. But again, it's one of those things. It's very easy to focus on the negatives. I can't do this without understanding, what all the positives are. Okay, Jocelyn, back to you. I'm sure, though, that Alex is definitely going to have an opinion on this as well. But our agency is consistently burning people out. At least 6 people have left this year. Why aren't agencies getting their shit together with this? Surely they realize it's bad for them and costing them money.
Well, I want to ask a lot of questions around this, but I'm guessing that we are very good at tokenizing well-being. We know that well-being is this thing that we want to get to and is really important, but there's a bit of a disconnect between what's personal responsibility and what is kind of the responsibility of your workplace. And so what we do is we have a well-being day, and people like me come in and talk about digital well-being and how to be have boundaries, and then it's all over and you go back to the slog. So I think in terms of when we look at what is burnout and what creates then, healthy places to work, we need to look at stopping exhausting people and recognizing there's 24 hours in the day and you can't squeeze more mental energy out of your brain. There's a limit to our cognitive capacities. When we're exhausted, we're inefficient, so we're not creative. And we become cynical then and kind of disconnect from the industry because of how we don't feel valued. And it comes back to that question of meaningful feedback and feeling valued beyond whatever our KPIs are and however you measure that in that space. So why aren't they getting their shit together? I think sometimes because it costs money and they're not really sure where to start and what that looks like in conversation. And there's many questions depending on how big your agency is, based on whether or not you even have a HR team that understands some of the aspects of what meaningful and authentic well-being looks like in terms of flexibility, hybrid work, not having meaningless meetings, your social contracts around communication and expectations and things like that.
Yeah, I've been reading, I don't know if anyone else has read it, Johan Hari's latest book, Stolen Focus. I think we need a big shift, and maybe you guys can all start to do this thing where we need to have much more control over how the places we're working for are contacting us in terms of, like, email, checking your email at 10 o'clock. I'm reading in that book that, in France, they've just passed a law where if you contact your staff after a certain time, you actually get fined. I think I saw Rent-A-Kill in the book. They said Rent-A-Kill tried to contact a guy about stuff and he didn't reply, and they got sued and they had to pay $70,000 fine. So we need a big thing, because this mobile phone is amazing. The computer we're on is amazing, but you need to be able to. We all need to figure out a way to get people to stop freaking contacting us at all hours of the day, and us being scared not to reply at 10 o'clock at night because our boss has said, you need to do this. That's obviously incredibly difficult because it's a complete societal shift that we need to do. I don't know, we need to all try to start to, boundaries. I think Sally's put in the content. That's what we need to put the boundaries in, because they can get blurred so hard and so much. And it's hard because some bosses, I mean, they're just, I'm going to say it, some of them are just arseholes. Like, they really are. There are a lot of arseholes, sociopaths at the top, which is obviously terrible, but there are a lot of them. And if I've been at places like that where I'm like 6:30 at night, can I leave yet? And they're like, oh, you're leaving early today. I'm like, no, it's not early, but it's just the way it is. And sometimes, I just need to leave this job and I need to find a way out. And you need to go into your interview and say, hey, this is me. I work really well when you give me responsibility and trust me, and I don't need to look over my shoulder for 10 hours a day, because I will get the job done. I have pride in myself. I have pride in doing the best job possible, and I need to have a life to put into my work. And if I don't have that life, you're not going to get the best out of me. And be upfront with it. And if they say, well, no, we've got a really hard, work hard, play hard thing, I'm like, this place is going to be terrible, because that means they're going to work you 14 hours a day, and then they're going to throw a party for you every 3 months and think everything's fine. I remember working at an agency in Sydney where they did the 360 feedback thing, and they asked all that stuff, and they got ripped through the shit, just like 150, 200 people. And my boss said, oh, you know what our problem was? We didn't throw a big party the night before, so everyone had a really great time and woke up the next day hungover and thinking this is the best place to work, and that's why we got bad feedback. And I'm like,
that's awful.
It's just awful, and there's nothing you can do about it like that. But the agency actually recognised it, and he lost his job about a month later. So they actually saw through it, which is really powerful. But I think we all need to find a way to put up those boundaries, and we all need a societal shift beyond how we're all being worked.
Yeah, but they're conversations about boundaries, because what my boundaries are and what your boundaries are might be kind of different. Yeah. So when my golden hours of work and if we talk about Cal Newport's sort of theory of deep work, or most creative hours of the day, that I'm a night owl. Like, I get going at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is when I have to pick my kid up from school. Yeah. So we really need to kind of then have those collaborative understandings within our teams, but then with clients around, well, what does this look like and what is responsiveness? Because the right to disconnect is something that even in Australia, we're starting to see things like, I think it's in, I want to say the South Australian Police in their new award. It's actually a part of that award to say you cannot contact a police officer in the downtime. They're already working 12-hour shifts. You then can't be following up about, minor matters by email in their downtime. So we're really starting to work with the neurobiology of the fact that we need to really value rest over the hustle, and that the hustle, people who are hustling are actually not going to be necessarily doing really creative work. And then I think we've got a question even about ADHD and neurodivergence later. And increasingly we need to affirm people's neurodivergence. So when you work well, how you work well, and rather than fitting people into a stock standard workday, is actually getting people outside that are neurotypical to understand us, me associating myself with that neurodivergence community.
Well, as well, like, if everyone was going to work the same hours and work the same, what's the point of having lots of different people? You want a breadth of people to be able to produce different things, because people think differently, and that's exciting. Yep. So we need to encourage more individuality, and obviously that's hard sometimes in the big agency where you feel like you're siloed. But if we can all just start to express ourselves and have those conversations, then it's going to slowly change over time. I'm having a thing at the moment where a guy I'm working with, we just don't see eye to eye on things, and I've just gone, well, we just don't work, so we need to change. So it happens at any age as well, not just when you're starting out. It happens all the time. You just go figure out, I would like to work this way, you like to work this way. If it's not going to be compatible, then let's not do it. So because you've got to look after them. If they want to work their way they want to work, then that's fine too. That's fine, but you got to be able to be you.
So did you consciously uncouple from your work colleague?
I have. I'm not sure if they are ready to yet, but it's okay. It'll be fine. Doing a lot of breath work, reading Thich Nhat Hanh's breath piece. What's it called? Peace in Every Breath, I think it's called, which is an amazing book. I should remember the title of it. But it's actually completely changed the way I've sort of seen the world. So I've never too old to learn new things.
That's great. I've just popped in the chat as well a couple of links. So I got a newsletter this morning from Brave New Work, which is an amazing book on the future of work and how we treat each other at work as well. But there was an interesting thing because it was all about feelings and how to talk about feelings at work. And one of the other things that so there's a podcast with the people who wrote the book as well. And they talked about like where we have to start with burnout is how to train managers to assign reasonable workloads. And I looked to that and I was like, wow, that is the thing in the creative industry, especially that I think, we just fail at all the time. And I've been talking to a few agencies recently about how to start to look at it from that perspective. Because we can't continue the way that it currently is going, but giving people the power, training them to say, actually, we need more people or we need to push back on deadlines. Because a lot of the times those demands are intolerable. And so, it needs to improve.
So can you please recommend to them that they read Oliver Burkeman's 4,000 Weeks? Because 4,000 weeks is the average life expectancy of humans. We all only have 24 hours in the day. So yes, Beyonce has 24 hours, but she also doesn't fold her own washing like I was doing until night. So same amount of time, different resources. And we do then need to rethink what we're trying to squish into those 24 hours and making sure that 8 hours of sleep is absolutely the foundation to our well-being and to how this is going to function.
Yeah. Okay, great. I've popped that link in there as well. So we've had a question which we'll come to in a few questions time. So thank you for popping that in. I'll jump to that shortly. Okay, so Alex, next one. This one's a little bit longer, but quite an interesting dynamic, I think. So regional versus city work. I'm a designer for a regional organisation. I've always felt, without any proof, that it would be harder to interview for a city firm and that my work is less legitimate, because I don't often need to pitch and I'm in-house. Community work feels far less competitive. Is there any actual basis to this fear? Is there any bias against regional work or community sector work not being involved with city design events or community, or having stayed with one employer for a long time? I'm not as worried as I used to be because I found a lot of meaning in my work and my skills have grown. I'd love to put this fear to rest in case I feel like a career change. It feels like imposter syndrome under a different hat. Thank you so much.
No, I don't think that's. I think you can allay that fear. I just think anyone who has half a brain can see through all that sort of stuff, that you have experience in different things. As long as you know your work is not all the same sort of work, you've done lots of different things. I'm sure you are. You have lots of interests, and you found meaning in your work. So that's 99% of the battle, is finding meaning in the work and not just turning up and going, I'm just doing this because I'm getting paid. Please, I've been in jobs where I've just gone, Alex, whatever they say, just say okay and smile, because it was just destroying me, and you can't do that for too long. So if you found meaning in your work, then that's great. I think you just need to I just keep saying, just go for it. Don't worry about it. All those biases that you hold. I think you can, again, overthink things a little bit. Just go for it. I don't know if that's really helpful or not, but I myself, I used to live in the city, and now I live in the Mornington Peninsula, so I'm considered probably regional. It hasn't impacted anything I do. In fact, it's made me a lot happier because I can go and walk on the beach every day. I can look at the trees. I can relax. I don't have sounds night and day keeping me awake. So I think that's actually can be a real benefit to people, because, a lot of people are moving out of the city, moving regional. A lot of people are regional, and people don't want to be in the city, and it's a huge market. It's a huge thing you can tap into that people who have, grown up in the city the entire time have never had. I found, moving regionally, that I know all my neighbours now. I've never known my neighbours, because you just don't say hello. You're all so busy. You're in your little concrete little prisons at home, and you don't ever pop your head out in the city, I found. And now I'm just like, we don't have fences. No one has a fence. Our dogs are mucking around in the street, talking about nothing is good. Like, that's really, really good. So I don't know if that helps at all, but it's definitely not any less legitimate than city work. It's just, if you've got passion and you've got pride in what you're doing and you want to grow, then that's the most important thing.
And as somebody completely outside the industry, I guess, I would say that it's still about your impact. So even if you're doing a campaign for, I don't know, the local bistro or the local speech pathologist, you're still showing that you have impact. And it might not be on a really big, sexy global level, or, in some of those bigger brands, but you can still kind of show how much of an impact your work has had. And so I'd focus on that, and the fact that you're supporting local communities do well and have meaning and purpose. So coming back to those positive psychology kind of models within the PERMA model of Martin Seligman, PERMA, sometimes with a plus on the end or a H on the end for health, is a really good way to kind of frame the work that you do.
I think also, like you've mentioned this a few times now in these questions, Jocelyn, like there's a lot of feel and not necessarily truth.
Yeah.
Right? Like trying to find the truth, I think, in some of this is really important. And also I was working with someone the other day, and we just said, like, let's just go through everything that you're good at and like just write it down even, like sometimes you just forget that actually you're really good at all of these things. And if you can present that then to someone, then, you're coming in with confidence, which is great. But also you're coming in with knowing what you're going to add to the business. And I think once you get to those kind of skills that you can bring forward, it's much easier to be able to say, hey, look, this is what I am and who I am. And it's not all about your portfolio of work.
And I think even being aware of your skills gap shows that you have insight. And so if you know where your gaps are and then you have a plan to bridge them, that's much better than somebody who comes in kind of really bullshit, thinking that they're amazing and not being able to see their own blind spots.
Yeah. And there's a comment around someone else who's moved to regional Victoria after living in Melbourne, and very grateful to work with lovely, down-to-earth clients, which in turn makes work really meaningful. That's good to hear. Okay, Jocelyn, back to you. I have ADHD and I'm open and transparent with my current employer. What to expect from me so as not to accidentally blurt out something or appear rude. The problem is I worry about finding new opportunities and feel that fear is holding me back. I'm a hard worker but have the normal ADHD struggles. I guess in the creative industry there are a lot of similar minds. Is this a valid concern or am I being too hard on myself?
Well, it's a really interesting one. So I identify as having had an ADHD diagnosis 12 years ago. And it's something that I kind of am careful where I share. So I don't necessarily put it on a t-shirt, but I do let key people know, because they very quickly work out that my mind is everywhere and that I need certain things to support me to actually do my deep work and be in that kind of hyper-focused zone. Otherwise I get bright and shiny object syndrome. So I think I think increasingly we're really lucky because we live in a world where that neurodivergence piece is really well accepted. There's a huge rise of, especially women, getting diagnoses of ADHD, and a different conversation around how ADHD looks and how it shows up. So when I hear normal ADHD struggles, there's nothing, I guess, typical about that profile anymore, because it shows up in so many different ways. So I think it's about building psychological safety when you're looking for new opportunities. So it's about kind of gating information and sharing in a way that feels like you're sharing just enough for them to get an insight, but that you're not blurting things out or being, not that I think you shouldn't be transparent, but I think you kind of need to get a read on what people's understanding of that is, because some people will see it as a superpower and ask you about how to work with that and what you need to kind of optimize your the best parts of your attention deficit. And then other people will just kind of not really know how to do that. So increasingly, being neurodivergent affirming is actually taking on an understanding of how people work differently and adapting the workplace so that that suits them and brings out their strengths, rather than trying to fit, the square peg in the round hole. So it's complex. I'd ask you a range of questions. For instance, if you take medication for ADHD, and whether or not you're being compliant with your meds, and whether as you move and go through a stage of change, you need to be a little bit more on top of that, because obviously ADHD meds compliance sometimes can be a tricky one. And really kind of looking at what supports you as you go through that change to make that as smooth as possible, because that transition for anyone is difficult.
Yeah, and I would say, I imagine that every person who's working has some sort of quirk or some sort of thing that they feel like maybe is holding them back or something. So I think you just need to realise that everyone is probably going through some things. Like, a lot of people in creative industries, you can tell, have short attention syndrome, always wanting to do this. Probably why we work in advertising and design, because things are happening really quickly. Like, I'm terrible. What was that shiny thing?
Object syndrome.
That's totally me. I'm always going, what's the new thing? And can't actually focus for years on something. It's just trying to write brain workout. I'm actually trying to focus on something for years, and I'm finding it a real challenge, because I'm always at a million miles an hour and doing lots of things. But because I'm at a million miles an hour and doing lots of things, I bring that all into everything I do, and that's actually been really helpful to me, that I have a really short attention span. And I'm always, like, people always ask me, like, how have you made all these things happen? I'm just like, I just had to make them. And like, because people are sometimes afraid of letting their true selves be out, and it's good. Just if you let your true self out with the positive energy of that, then you're going to get positive energy back into you, I think. So I can think of the question here, says a lot of people with similar minds in creative industry. I think that's really true. I know lots of creative directors I know where you can tell I don't know if they've been diagnosed, but they certainly have appeared to be ADHD or some degree, because they're bouncing off the room all the time. They've always got this non-stop energy. That's amazing, like, because you can be interested in so many different things, and then when you get a brief, all of a sudden that thing that you thought about randomly in the middle of the night is going to be something that's really important, and you can bring it into your work. And I think that's actually really can be seen as a real advantage over people who some people are maybe slow and methodical. Maybe that's not what you need for the role that you're looking at. So, just embrace it. And I was talking to a friend of mine, because we homeschool our kids. And we were just at PE, and we was having a chat to his dad, and he's definitely ADHD, because he's like full on, and he's jumping all over the place. And he just says to people, hey, if I'm going to lose it at you, I'll say I'm going to lose it at you, but don't take it personally. It's just the way I am, and I just need to get it out of my head. And then it's like, we're all cool, because at least I've been upfront. I've been upfront about it. You knew what to expect from me, and I know that maybe it's different to you, but that's okay, because this is who I am, and I bring all this crazy energy into positivity when it's required, and can turn that around to be good for everyone. I think it's always, you want to work for a place that allows you to be you, because there's only one of you, and there's a reason you're there, that the other person didn't get the job. You obviously have something in you that they saw. So you just need to realise that that's the case, and just use that as the power for you.
I think it's important as well, isn't it, that there's education. Like, only you can know you the best. And there are definitely times when we can say, hey, this so-and-so is a bit ADHD, but then actually there's diagnosis, and there's you understanding what that diagnosis means, and then being able to educate the people that you work with. Because I think, like, being able to show that you do a fantastic job, and that you're highly functioning, yet you do struggle with something, like we all struggle with lots of things. I think is really a great opportunity to kind of help people understand how to work with you best and get the most out of you. And I think, being able to bring that to an employer is a great thing to have. The other thing I would also suggest is, like, if you're looking for jobs and you've got a good relationship with your employer, is to get the reference early and take it with you. And even, like, if needs be, like, have it, if you're worried about it, like, have it included in the reference and say how you work together and, you know, what great work you've done. Because I think it's good to be able to take it from one place to the next. So.
And I think how people manage that. So I'm pretty well managed. When I'm really stressed, then some of those traits come out more. And increasingly, like, attention deficits actually have to do with a thing in the brain called executive functioning skills. And they're things like activating, like getting started on something, sustaining focus, putting in effort, having emotional control. So even though you don't like it, you've got to be like the pair of Nikes and just do it. And then your memory to actually kind of be able to keep on top of, like, where in the project you're at and what you were supposed to do. So sometimes what I do with adults with ADHD is we might, in this groups, everyone does an executive functioning skills assessment and see where the strengths and weaknesses are across the team. So there's lots of those different kind of decision-making tools and different, like, what type of personality are you tool. This is everyone has executive functions. Everyone's executive functions sometimes get depleted. Whether or not that then meets criteria for a diagnosis and all of those things is different. But there's lots of ways we can explore the fact that our attention, to go back to Johann Hari's Stolen Focus book, all of our attention is being chopped up into confetti. We all need strategies to do that deep work and maintain focus and not be kind of, you know, off looking at all the bright, shiny things or even just tracking notifications unnecessarily.
Also, another thing I think as well, like, a lot of the work that I've done outside of my day-to-day job that has been really cool has been stuff that's happened to me in my own personal life and then turning that into something. Like, my daughter, you know, diagnosed with epilepsy, you know, I thought she died. And so we decided to do something for Epilepsy Action Australia and did a whole campaign around a little teddy bear that they gave her to help her normalise her things. She dyes her hair purple every day because that's their purple day. And we did a thing last year where we did this $1 million teddy bear. We got on the project, we raised $80,000 a night. And that's all because of things that happened in my life. I actually went, well, I'm not just going to let it fester and stuff. Maybe I can do something that will help other people. So maybe if you have ADHD, maybe you might bring your skills to do something that helps normalise ADHD in the workplace. And all of a sudden you can go and have in your folio this amazing thing that you've done that they're going to go, this is amazing, we need you in here because you have ADHD and let's go take advantage of that. I want some of that stuff that you've done and that energy. I don't know, just, you know what I mean? I just think there's something about things that happen to you in your life you can turn into something that's really powerful for you and for others who are going through the things that you're going through. And all the things I've done outside of work, they've all been things like cancer and Camp Quality have done things for them. And the most rewarding things I've ever done have been things which have just been things that have happened in my personal life. I've gone, I need to help people who are also going through this bullshit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, great. Okay, we've got about 6 minutes left and at least, I think, about 3 or 4 questions. So let's see if we can get through these. So Alex, quickly over to you. I've been working in the industry as a freelancer for 20 years. I still struggle with these 2 conflicting scenarios. Either I'm just stressing about not having to work to pay the rent, or I'm stressed because I'm so busy I don't know how I'm going to meet the deadlines. Is this just the normal yo-yo of freelance life, and are there any ways to cope with the stress?
Yeah, I mean, I've been freelance for 5 years and in between doing things, and it is that big up and down sort of stress. So, I mean, that's just like, you know, doing as much as you can of disconnecting from things and doing meditation, all those sort of things are all really sort of helpful things. And then it's just realising that sometimes you're going to be manic having to catch up with things. But then when you do have that space, you need to find ways to not go, oh, I'm scared, I'm not going to get the next job. You need to use that time to do something, to hang out with your friends and do the things that you maybe missed out on. So it is a struggle and it is a juggle. The juggle is real, as I like to say. So yeah, sometimes it is just that is the way it's going to be. It's just all the things. I'm sure Jocelyn's got lots of coping mechanisms to deal with the stress. I've got about 1 billion of them, but I'm always trying different things like, you know, meditations and you know, a bit of Wim Hof never goes astray, and jumping in the freezing water every day. It's awesome. It actually makes you feel good. Do that
water down there.
Breathing, every breath, every piece in every breath is amazing. So just get lots of different things to help you cope with the stress of life, because life is stressful. No, there's no avoiding it probably. If you're not stressed, then you're probably not excited to do things and get going, because I find the deadline makes me do stuff. If I don't have a deadline, it just floats away.
Exactly, right? Because there's a good type of stress and there's a good amount of stress. If we all didn't have some level of anxiety, we wouldn't have evolved. So I am partnered with a person who is a freelancer, and I literally watch this and I do the stressing about when there's no work around. So my advice is like, get a breadwinner partner, so then you don't have to worry and you can just be creative. But it's a little bit about financial management. So I think I've worked with a lot of actors in the past too, and I've got a kind of background in theatre and things like that. And a lot of actor friends will get big jobs on big series and be flush with cash and then not work for 6 months and really struggle. So I think there's some level of financial management that we need to, and literacy that we need to kind of bring to the fore here for freelancers specifically, how to kind of have a little bit in the kitty. And then in those not busy times, just being able to amplify your work. So I've made my partner create his own newsletter, because he is like basically this sponge for everything about film. He's a walking encyclopedia and he's so passionate about it that I make him write little blogs and I make him share all of his inner workings. Because even though you might not have work for him as a director at the moment, you're building trust around how much he knows about film and storytelling by getting these little snippets of things from him.
Yeah, build your own brand in the spare time.
Yeah, basically.
You don't have work, your work is your brand. Yeah.
Exactly. And really kind of leaning into that passion and not being afraid to kind of amplify, or even just say, hey, who's got some work for me? Where are things happening? And obviously the film industry and directors and creating content over the last 2 years have been, slammed because of that domino effect of the high-end directors kind of, coming back to work on much smaller jobs. So I think it's just being able to know that there's the two kind of extremes, and being able to find your grounded space in the middle by doing some really practical things, because I'm guessing the stress comes from financial stress. So how can you kind of lock that down a little bit? And then how can you play your work and really kind of swim in the creative juices when you don't have the pressure around deadlines and delivery?
Brilliant. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Jocelyn, I'm going to stick with you for this one, but I think we'll both we'll all have a point of view on this. So after 2 years ago, I took over the management of our digital team. My background's in design, not necessarily management, but the business side of things is something I really enjoy, and we've made significant improvements as a team. My question is, what is something that a manager or leader you've had or seen done that had a significant impact to the well-being and productivity of the individuals?
Okay. So I think it's really important to work out, are you a leader or a manager? Because they're two different kind of ways of thinking. So a manager, is kind of coming in above people, and the leader is like in amongst it and guiding people through. So I think to some degree, it's about the collaborative process, or to whatever degree, co-designing or collaborating on what does well-being look like. So because well-being means so many different things to people, it's not necessarily having somebody come in every second Friday to give you free massages. It might be having Genius Hour or having different projects. I think the main stuff is really tailored, and it asks people what that means, and then you come up with your own kind of team, not manifesto, but agreement around what that is and what you're working towards, rather than saying, hey, we decided we're going to have that party, or we're going to have whatever, and people are like, I don't want that. I have a lot of people who come to see me who are like, oh yeah, here we go again, it's Wellbeing Wednesday. And it's just like,
and it's always stuff that takes extra time.
Yeah.
It's actually more stressful, right? Yeah. All those things are outside of I've got stuff to do actually.
Yeah. It's kind of like International Women's Day. It's like, oh God, here we go. Something else to organize. So really, instead of being tokenistic, giving people participation rights, like what does it look like if you took control of that? What do you need? And what you need at different times of the year, obviously with that spiky work, you need different things at different times. So how do you plan for your seasons of well-being?
I've just shared. We haven't promoted this yet, but it is up on the site. The report from the research we did into empathy in the creative industry a few months ago, and there's actually some really good stuff in there for leaders. Because it really is. It's no longer about. Well, I think that's the big thing I've taken away from all this. Like, as soon as you get into those positions, it's not about you anymore. It's always been about, raising your profile and getting to the, next step on the ladder. Actually, as soon as you've got a team, it's about them. And one of the biggest things, I think, is trust. If you can show and prove that you trust them, that will help. That actually, rather than any other activities, helps their mental well-being more than anything else. Alex, I think I know you had a pre-prepared answer to this question, so let's go with this last one around. Hey, how do I ask for a promotion?
So I thought of an answer for this, which I was shaving before, trying to make myself look less like a psycho. So the idea was, if you're going to ask for promotion, you work in the creative industry, if you're working design, you're advertising, when you go and present an idea to sell it through, you do an awesome presentation, you do a Google slide document, or you do a video or something, do the same thing about yourself. You're the product, sell yourself. Go and put together a presentation, design, if you're a logo designer, design a logo of you getting a promotion. You know what I mean? Just do something, use your skills and show it. This is the reason why I deserve a promotion, is because I've done this awesome presentation. It's going to make you laugh, going to make you smile. It's going to be awesome. It's going to sell you. I think that could be a really great way of doing it. Like, you can do a creative brief of all the different reasons. You can fill it out. Say, the single-minded proposition is I deserve a promotion. Here's the reasons to believe are I'm time efficient. I'm always going above and beyond. And here's the result of that is I've just done this ad that is about me getting a promotion. And I think they were just like, it's just so different to someone nervously going, so I've worked here for 3 months. I've passed maybe an extra $10,000. Yeah. So I think maybe just do it like that. It could be fun as well. You'll enjoy doing something like that, and you'll be able to show, here's a year, the last year I've done all this cool stuff. Hey, show me the money, baby.
I missed one final question in the questions tab. So very quickly, I studied architecture, but currently working as a creative art director. My colleagues' feedback to me with my creative work is that I am too analytical. How do I manage that analytical instinct when I had 10 years working as a 3D graphic designer? Alex, any view on that?
Can you just repeat it again? I was just
Yeah, so I think it's someone who's come from studied architecture, and they've come from a background which is a little bit more analytical versus creative. So I guess maybe there's a little bit of right brain, left brain in there.
Yeah, I was going to say they buy Alex's 2 books.
Yes, exactly. So how do you manage? I think how do you manage that analytical instinct? When it's obviously so much a part of your DNA, when working with teams that are probably, a lot more, I've got to get it right, left side?
Yep.
Yes.
I guess, it's hard, isn't it? You just need to try just different things. Like, I find that's what I like about having worked in advertising, is being able to access different parts of my brain for different things. Sometimes you do have to be analytical. Sometimes you do need to be emotional. So you need to figure out a way to try different things. One of my friends, I became friends with this Tommy Little, obviously a comedian. He's on the project, and he's just an amazing person. And he gave me this great, one of the things I asked for right brain workout is some creative tips that people could give. And his was the most simple one, which is just go and make some shit. Even if it's shit, that's all right. The next day, it'll be a little less shit. And then it'll be less. So you just keep doing something different each day. And then it won't take long. And all of a sudden, they'll be saying, you need to be a bit more analytical. You've gone too fucking crazy. You're crazy. Like, I think it's just just try things that make you uncomfortable. I think you need to do things that are really uncomfortable. Because I think that's, it's a really obvious analogy. But when you're on a comfy couch, what are you going to do? You're going to end up sort of nodding off and falling asleep because you're too comfortable. When you're in an awfully uncomfortable wooden chair, you have to keep moving to get the blood flowing. So you can't sit still. I think that's good to be not comfortable. So I think that's actually a really good challenge. I think that's actually could be really exciting, because you go, well, I've done all this stuff for 10 years. Now I'm going to try something new and different. And it's like you're a kid again. And there's nothing better than hanging around kids, because they're like, that didn't work. What's the next thing? That didn't work. That didn't work. All of a sudden, it worked. How cool is that? Oh, awesome. you know, so you're going to grow by having been told that. It's an interesting thing. And then you might go, actually, maybe I don't want to do that sort of stuff. And that's okay too, but at least you've tried something different, and that will break through the threshold potentially.
And
Any final
sorry,
words
I
on
was
that,
just going to
Jocelyn?
say, ask
Yeah,
them for examples, right? So what's the opposite of analytical? What are they actually asking for? And what questions do they want to be asked, right? Like how do you coach them through that? So I think that 360 kind of coaching model and saying, I give you permission to coach me on how to do better feedback works. Like, what does that look like? What do you need to know? What am I missing? Because you don't know what you don't know. So if you're in an analytical mind and you know that there's like a different way of being, but you don't know how to get into that gear, you need someone to kind of demonstrate that for you. Just like when you're learning to drive a car, you've got somebody in the kind of driver's seat going, well, this is how you press on the clutch and do all these things. So make the invisible visible and name it to tame it.
Excellent. All right. Well, we've got a little bit over.
Just on that, don't be scared of sharing your innermost, weirdest ideas, because I think people are often scared of showing that weird stuff. Just show the weird stuff. The weird stuff's where the fun is. Be weird. Weird's good.
Weird is a compliment, as I like to say.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent.
Cool.
All right. Well, that's it for this month. We'll be back on the first Thursday of next month. You can always jump onto the site and register for that as well. All these recordings go up. So if you've ever missed an Asking for a Friend, then every single one, which I think this was our 2-year anniversary today, is up on the site. So go check them out. And we'll be back next month. But thank you so much once again, Jocelyn and Alex, for returning and sharing insights, expertise, wisdom, advice. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Super fun. Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.